Evening. This is the Oregon City Commission's regular meeting, and today is Wednesday, April 7th. Good evening, Alice North, the mayor.
Nacita, Commissioner.
Agnelli, Commission President.
Archie Smith, Commissioner.
Would you please stand and join me in the flag salute?
I'm inconsequential.
Oh, we're gonna. Oh, extend it back to one more. I'm sorry. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Sorry about that. We have a very exciting way to begin our meeting this evening, and that is to introduce to you and the citizens of Oregon City our new city manager. David Frazier is David Frazier is on his first day as city manager of Oregon City, but to make him actually official, we will administer an official oath of office to him. So let's do that first, and then you will feel thoroughly invested, right, burdened, challenged, and appreciated. Please raise your on. It is okay. Please raise your hand and repeat after me. I, and state your name, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Oregon, and I will, to the best of my ability, faithfully perform the duties of City Manager of Oregon City during my incumbency thereof. Thank you very much. Forward to a long and fruitful journey together. So we'll get on with it this evening as we start with a really fun thing. I was called to the office because there was something that was too large to fit in my mailbox. It turned out to be something really cool. If you remember, Oregon City was designated by Valerie actually came to the Citizens of Oregon City from First Lady Michelle Obama as a Preserve America community. And one of the privileges that we get is that we get to have a Preserve Oregon community sign. We may order more of these if we like, but this came in the mail with some guidelines about where to hang it. You know, a very visible place where the people that come into the community can note that we are one of 6 communities in Oregon so designated.
712, 7, my address would be fine.
Excuse me. Well, I know this is highly coveted, so maybe we could sell you a small one. But anyway, we did apply for this special designation. I would certainly like to thank Lloyd Purdy, our Main Street manager, who wrote that. He wrote that application, and what that does is recognizes a community that does these 3 things: that protects and celebrates their heritage, I think we do, that uses their historic assets for economic development and community revitalization, certainly our goal, and encourages people to experience and appreciate local historic resources through education and heritage tourism programs. So the benefits, besides the sign, are White House recognition. We've already gotten that. Have a lovely letter from Michelle Obama, and a Preserve America road sign, and a certificate of recognition. Got that. And last but hardly least, it does give us eligibility to apply for Preserve America grants. And in fact, we were designated one day, and I think in 24 hours, Lloyd had put together an application for $160,000 of historic-related improvements for Oregon City. So we are eligible for this matching grant program, and we're hoping, because we understand that the funding was cut for next year, that's why Lloyd's breakneck overnight grant writing skills were put to good order. So thank you again, Lloyd. We appreciate that so much. Then we also are permitted to use the Preserve America logo on our signs, flags, banners, and promotional materials. We are listed in a web-based Preserve America community directory and in national and regional press releases. And of course, the bottom line is it enhances our community visibility and our pride. So that's our presentation for this evening. Next, I have a proclamation. Again, one of the privileges of being mayor is to draw things to the community's attention. And this one says, whereas sexual assault affects every person of Oregon as a victim, survivor, or as a family member, friend, neighbor, employer, or co-worker of a victim survivor, and whereas it is estimated that 1 out of 6 adult women in Oregon has been the victim of forcible rape sometime in her lifetime, and whereas it is important to recognize that sexual violence is preventable, and whereas it is important to encourage healthy, nonviolent intentions and diminish aspects of society that promote and support sexual violence, and whereas it is important to broaden the scope and increase the effectiveness of sexual violence prevention efforts through partnerships, and whereas it is important to recognize the compassion and dedication of the individuals who provide service to survivors and work to prevent sexual violence, and whereas every individual and community in Oregon has the ability to help eliminate sexual violence by working together to promote social change. Now, therefore, I, Alice Norris, Mayor of the City of Oregon City, do proclaim April 2010 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month, along with many other communities in Oregon. So then, that concludes our presentations for the evening, and we'll move on to citizen comments. I see that we have a couple of speakers signed up, and I just remind you, as always, that when you come to speak to us up to 3 minutes, that we'd like you to give your name and the community in which you reside, and then you may give us your message. First is Bill Daniels, followed by Tom O'Brien.
Bill Daniels, I reside in Oregon City. Madam Mayor, fellow commissioners.
Is this on? It seemed to be on.
You sound like it, but
Try the other one, Bill.
Yeah, give me. Sorry, first thanks. Is it still working?
well, we can hear you. I don't know.
I have 3 issues I'd like to raise that are relevant to the city regarding items that are not on the agenda, or at least 2 of them are not, and apparently one that's associated with item 7B on the agenda. And those three issues, I would hope we could have at some point a public discussion in a work session format, or however it may be. We could do that, and at some future date, perhaps have an agenda item to make a motion to discuss and perhaps approved. 3 different issues I have to bring forward. One of those, of course, is adopting, or in fact improving, the current parking management program that we have. I don't know if the correct word is adoption or approval of, but I know we have one that's been put forward to the commission. And of course, our neighborhood here, McLaughlin neighborhood, is enormously impacted by a lot of what goes on downtown, and the sooner that we can implement that program, specifically on increasing fines for a lot of the violations. They're woefully low and not really of any consequence to a lot of folks. And perhaps even an addition of another code enforcement officer, part-time, or however we can put that person to use to implement enforcement. Secondly, the other issue I'd like to bring up is one about the library. And I've had discussions with some folks informally, and I'd also like to have formal discussions perhaps at a public hearing, or certainly at a work session and perhaps a public hearing on the idea of combining both the police and the court system with the library on the same footprint in the location where the police are currently located now. I think there's a lot of merit to having the same brick and mortar. I think it's a bond measure that perhaps all the citizens could and would embrace on passing something of that nature, where you've got two very important assets to our city that need to be addressed, and perhaps I think that that's an idea that merits discussion. And I lost my mic for a few seconds here. And the last thing I wanted to bring up for discussion at another time, sooner the better. It's perhaps more urgent than others might think, but I would like to have a discussion on eliminating the charter restrictions on term limits for city commission. I was here when that was implemented approximately 10 years ago, and I still never understood why it passed. And I would like to have that discussion and perhaps to have city commission take a vote to put it back on the ballot in November. Thank you.
Bill? Tom?
Is this one on?
Go ahead.
Tom O'Brien, Oregon City. I was very happy to see Mayor Norris get very excited about a very nice looking sign. And the purpose of my presentation tonight is to bring to your attention some good looking signs and some perhaps signs which are not showing a favorable image of our city. Prior to tonight's meeting, I sent you an email reviewing two sections of the sign code that had been presented and read into the minutes by our city attorney at your March 3rd meeting. The photos I'm about to share with you were all taken since that meeting, so these are all current. This is I'll let you make your own judgment as to the quality and whether these are appropriate signs or not that you're going to be viewing. Currently are spending millions of dollars attempting to improve the appearance of our city. By spending a few $1,000s enforcing our sign codes, we could vastly improve the appearance of our city. In the second set of photos I counted, at least 31 signs constructed of banner material, which is prohibited under our current city code. If permits have been issued for these banners, I would then suggest a review to determine why such permits were approved. If a valid sign permit does not exist, I believe these signs should be removed and our sign codes enforced. Respectfully submitted, Tom O'Brien.
Thank you. I also have a slideshow of signs that come out only on weekends as well. Okay. Is that the end of citizen comment? All right, thank you. We'll look at the agenda. The under general business 7B, the library issue, will not be a decision this evening. We are not ready to look at the sales contract, but our library director will have a complete report, an update, and current status report for us in the place of that spot. And then on the consent agenda, is there any that commissioners wish removed for separate consideration? I have one, and it would be the minutes of March the 17th. So other than that, okay, we'll take the agenda in the order in which it is listed with those revisions. Next, let's go into get back there, to the public hearings. The first one is Ordinance 10-1001, which is a code amendment to our municipal code to reduce the Planning Commission from 7 members to 5. This is something that's been discussed off and on for several years, and is finally now coming to us as an official recommendation. So we're looking forward to having the staff report, who is Laura Butler. But I need to tell you why she's here tonight and not Tony Conkle. Tony Conkle and his wife had a baby this morning at 8 o'clock. So that's his doctor's excuse for making a little girl. So we wish Tony congratulations, and we know that the dark circles on his eyes in the future won't be coming from those Planning Commission meetings only. So Laura, if you'd like to jump into the staff report, that would be great.
Thank you very much. I'm here this evening to present to you Legislative File 10-01, which is a proposed amendment to reduce the size of the Planning Commission. As you know, Chapter 2.24.020 of our Oregon City Municipal Code designates the size of the Planning Commission as 7 members. This proposed amendment would reduce the Planning Commission size from 7 to 5. It would not change the authority or scope of the Planning Commission. The Commission report included a staff report which listed all of the applicable criteria. The criteria from Chapter 17.58 of the Municipal Code. It also identified findings showing that the proposed legislative file does comply with those criteria. This file was heard before the Planning Commission on March 22nd. The Planning Commission unanimously decided to recommend the City Commission approve the proposal. There were 2 public comments that were entered into the record at the Planning Commission hearing. No additional public comments have been received since. At this time, I did want to enter into the record proposed ordinance 10-1001. And other than that, I'm just here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Essentially, this is aligning city code with practice as it has been for the last almost decade, I think. So we'll open up a bit to discussion or a motion. Commissioner Zita.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the retreat, I spoke with interest about making this amendment to our code. Subsequently, though, I've changed my mind. The reason I've changed my mind is it's come to my attention both through emails to the Commission as a whole and from personal communications to me, and I think to others, that there have been numerous people who have expressed interest in serving on boards and commissions in Oregon City, including the Planning Commission, who have not been selected to do so. Some of them who I know personally. And I think I'm concerned about that. And I think that I'd prefer to see a real good faith attempt to fill the positions, the 2 vacant seats, before considering shrinking the Planning Commission size. I think that with the changes we've seen recently, including the change in our city manager, that there are people in the community who either have been turned down in the past or who were discouraged from applying in the past, may well decide that it is indeed a new day and that they may take that opening of the door and decide to apply for a position on this board and on other boards. So I don't see a need for the first reading or second reading. I think my position at this point is that I'd like to keep the Planning Commission at the same size it is now, and respectfully ask Mayor Norris to make a good faith effort to recruit 2 more members to the Planning Commission.
Commissioner West.
I would just stand with my computer. I don't want to speak. We were testing our computers on our names, so I'm not
All
ready to
right, then Commissioner Neely.
Rocky, please, right?
The appointment of members of any advisory board, planning commission, district review committee, the only exception I know of offhand would be the Urban Renewal Agency Commission. That appointment is strictly at the discretion. That appointment is strictly at the discretion of the mayor by charter. I have a concern that, in fact, the reduction should not occur, but the fact we don't, the fact that the mayor has made decisions perhaps not to select individuals to serve on the planning commission is a judgment that the mayor makes. That's by charter. I do know that when I first came on the city commission several years ago, we had 7 outstanding members of the planning commission, and if it is the fact that we're not getting people who are both qualified and are able to communicate in a civil capacity, then we need to broaden our search to guarantee we get such individuals. Having said that, I don't feel strongly that we ought to reduce the size of the planning commission. I think that's a good area where you can have broader deliberations among a greater group of people. And so I probably wouldn't support this either, but not for the reasons that Commissioner Nocita stated. As I said, it is at the discretion of the mayor that people are appointed to that commission.
Commissioner Smith.
And I agree. I think it's extremely crucial that we have as many opportunities for citizen input and citizen participation, and with the hope and the knowledge that even currently our neighborhood associations are growing, and we're reinstating neighborhood associations, it would make sense that that's also widening our pool for possible participants. And you know, I realize that, you know, some people might not have been coming forward, or I don't know, you know, really why we haven't been able to find individual candidates. But I think that in the future that's going to increase with the involvement from our neighborhood associations. And I also think that since our current mayor is at the end of her term, that I don't know if it's wise to make a decision like this when we're definitely going to have a new mayor in. And so I think right now is not the time to make this change.
And I don't have any problem with that either. It's really up to the discretion of the commission. It has been difficult to. The reason it's been difficult to keep filled is because it's besides serving on the city commission, it's the most time-consuming and technical committee that we have. It's really tough work, and we've had a number of times where I have appointed people who just haven't been able to keep up the workload and their job as well. So it is difficult, but I agree with all the comments. I think scout pretty broadly for applicants, and traditionally there's only 1 or 2. And I don't think there's any circumstances in which I make appointments alone. Since the beginning of my term, I have broadened that to always include the chair of the committee to which I am appointing, if the committee hasn't already recommended it. Some of them I'm out of. They make a recommendation to me. I, in almost 100% of the cases, will talk to that person just to kind of make sure I appoint someone that I've seen, and then will appoint who that group has selected, and then I usually include the staff person in the interview as well, so that they can answer any questions that the person might have. So that's just an explained process. We have several businesses signed up to speak on this evening as well. So Paul Egger, followed by Tom O'Brien.
My name is Paul Edgar. I'm a citizen of Oregon City and the land use chair of the Kenema Neighborhood Association. I think citizen involvement in the public process is critical. And anytime we can get more citizens involved, what we end up with is greater filtering, greater identification of right and wrong, and just literally more outreach into all of the neighborhoods, all of the citizenry. I cannot, in my mind, envision that reducing the number of members in the Planning Commission from 7 to 5 as enhancing citizen involvement. On the contrary, I can only envision it reducing the opportunity for citizen involvement and citizen filtering to take place. And I know, as an example, as I happen to be one of the people that applied to sit on the Planning Commission. I have years of experience in corporate planning. I've done commercial development. I own commercial buildings, both for office and for residential. I have also been fortunate enough to buy from the family an 1880 house, restore it, take it through Planning Commission, and through the Historic Review Board. I've taken steps to go to the National Historic Trust and take classes on design. I've taken classes at Portland State on transportation, basically master's degree programs to update myself on all transportation considerations, but yet I'm retired. I'm an ex-owner of businesses, but I, as an example, where a person that was not qualified or not accepted, and I know that there are plenty of other people with skill sets, time, energy, and desire, and passion for the city. I would love to try to contribute to the city in the most appropriate and positive way I can, and be pragmatic. Honestly, weigh things. My corporation, when I was with NCR Corporation, sent me to a Harvard Business School class on how to make decisions based upon weighted value decision processing. They wanted all management teams to think positively and consistently in a positive way, but on a set of standards. I think that there are plenty of people here in this town that are capable. I hope that I was one of them. And I believe that in the long haul, when given an opportunity for more people to participate on critical decision making, we can help. Thank you.
Tim? Oh, Tom, I'm sorry.
Tom O'Brien, and I still live in Oregon City. It has been stated that it has been difficult to find 7 individuals out of a population of 30,000 to serve on the Planning Commission, and thus the commission should be made up of fewer members. Fewer members would bring less knowledge, less experience, and fewer viewpoints to the decision-making process. Can the best decisions really be made by reducing the number of individuals who are trying to understand the impact of those decisions? Some individuals may be reluctant to serve on the Planning Commission because they are unable to commit to a 4-year term. Others may not wish to serve on a body that has a built-in bias that represents the opinions and views of a singular person who has appointed the commission members. If a mayor has many fine qualities, which our current mayor does, the voters will approve that individual as their choice for mayor. Voters seldom understand that by selecting a mayor, they have in effect given a single individual the opportunity to form all of the commissions. This is not a healthy situation. The voters have elected all city commission members, and all members of the commission should thus share in the responsibilities of planning for the future viability and livability of our city. Diversity of opinions and knowledge, as well as a willingness to achieve what is in the best interest of all citizens, should be the determining factor in the makeup of any of our commissions. Decisions made by today's Planning Commission impact the viability and livability of our city for the next 30 to 50 years. The question before you should be, is it appropriate for one individual to appoint all members of this Planning Commission? Now would be a great time to take a change in the code and allow for a process that better represents the views and the wishes of our citizens. I don't have time to explain my proposal in the 3 minutes which I'm allocated to speak. Therefore, I intend to provide each of you with a handout outlining a proposal for your consideration. This proposal offers a means for improving our current Planning Commission. I sincerely hope that you will consider it.
Actually, I'd like to speak to that briefly. The fact that the mayor does have the power, for good or ill, for appointments is probably the most distinguishing of the characteristics of the mayor that we elect. And not wanting to hold that solely in my home, that's why I expanded the process. But I am not at all adverse to including the commission on some of those appointments. I don't think that's a bad idea, though many communities do it that way. So, the next speaker, Commissioner West.
I'm going to try to add something different to the conversation here. I am for citizen involvement as well, and every opportunity provided, I would definitely be supportive. Although the reality, I was on Planning Commission over 4 years ago, and it was 5 people then. It was just on briefly, but I understand the mayor's difficulty in finding qualified people to do it, and for the reasons probably that she had stated. It's the second biggest time commitment, or sometimes even the first compared to city council. It's a huge job. But that being said, it's kind of nice we have our new Main Street program, and our Main Street program, a piece of it is really focused on historic preservation, and we are garnering more citizens that are interested in design and architects. So I'm looking forward to that maybe being as kind of the training ground and getting people interested in working with the city, and maybe down the road we will have some more applicants to apply.
Thank you. Commissioner Neely?
Yeah, I was just very quickly going to have Mr. O'Brien's comments here, and what he has stated here I don't think involves changing the charter. I don't know that you're questioning the right of the mayor to make the appointment, but you're suggesting that commissioners put forward recommendations and so on.
We can't hear you from back there.
I don't know
To start over, please.
detail. I would ask you to look at the situation. If it requires that it be in the charter, then I think a charter change is an appropriate action. Oftentimes, it's better to achieve things through a committee rather than putting the burden on the mayor to find enough members for all the various commissions in the city. I just don't think that's fair to whoever the mayor is. I would have an extremely difficult time. No one person knows the qualities of the entire population of 30,000. But between the 5 commissioners, somebody's bound to have enough good candidates that you can form a pool, and then if someone does require dropping out, and I think Mayor's correct that it's a long-term commitment and it's a lot of hours. And I know that I have limited staying power. Anything that I embark upon, at the most I'm with it I just resigned from one thing I've been doing for 8 years, and I resigned from another thing I've been doing for 5 years. That's why you're seeing me more often now. But I'm limited in what kinds of time commitments I'm willing to devote to any one thing.
I would like to clarify. It sounds as if everyone believes that I go out and appoint people. That is not how the process works. When we have vacancies on our boards and commissions, our city recorder, Nancy Ide, sends out to all of the media outlets that we know about an announcement about those vacancies. I accept those vacancies, and I announce it too to the Chamber of Commerce, Good Morning Oregon City, wherever I go. I mention that there are openings, and we have openings that mostly at the beginning, kind of in the fall. It's our biggest time of planning. And then I take those applications. There may be 2, there may be 6, which is rare for anything, but often it's 1 or 2. And I am, in some cases, stuck with those 1 or 2. And if neither of them, I believe, are qualified, either in temperament or experience or diversity, the other things that I personally want to include, I think that all of our boards and commissions should be geographically diverse, gender diverse, experience diverse, as well as kind of old and new residents, people who've lived here a short time, who I think see things differently than those who've been long-term residents. So those are the kind of criteria I go over. But Commissioner Neely.
I'm just going to make a comment. As far as I know, the charter gives the mayor 2 responsibilities. One being the appointment to advisory committees, and of course, in case the planning commission, that is the governing council, but and also setting the order of the agenda. The mayor doesn't even have the authority to preclude something being on the agenda if the commission puts it forward. So the powers of the mayor are very, very limited. I'm not certain I want to do anything of that nature. The only thing, I mean, if we're going to go that direction, then we might as well, set up a charter amendment that eliminates the mayor's position and just elect the chair of the commission and have a different charter of that nature. But if we're going to have a mayor, I think this is, I have no problem with it. I do like the notion that the commissioner's responsibility is to make recommendations to people that might even be directly contacted to see if their interest is there. I think that's a great idea.
You can do that now.
Yeah, but actually formalize that in a more formal fashion.
Okay, can we get back to the topic? Is there anyone who wishes to make a motion on this? Commissioner Nocita.
I would actually move to terminate proceedings on ordinance number 10-1001.
Moved by Commissioner Nocita, seconded by Commissioner Neely to terminate discussion. I'm sure we need to do that, but terminate this ordinance and adopted it.
Terminate the proceedings because there would be a first and second reading in this.
Well, to defeat the ordinance because we're being, but okay, you understand what I think you understand the purpose of it. No further comment or discussion? Nancy, the vote, please.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner West? Mayor Norris?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Moving on to our general business agenda. First, we'll be talking about the Warren and Milne Road restriping. With the possibility of adding bike lanes from the west of Molall Avenue to Beaver Creek Road, a project that we're doing with our funds, and our staff on this is Nancy Frenchauer, City Engineer and Public Works Director.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, City Commissioners. We're here tonight to present to you information that we've collected in examining the appropriateness of adding bike lanes to Warren and Milne Road between Molall Avenue and Beaver Creek Road. As you know, this is an area that now has one through lane in each direction and a center turn lane and sidewalks on both sides, curb-type sidewalks nonetheless. So the right-of-way is fairly limited for adding bike lanes without removing some other piece of infrastructure from that cross-section. And one of the things that we have been trying to do better at in the last couple of decades is to marry land use and transportation better, and certainly to provide as much as we can multimodal facilities so that we can encourage bikes and peds to travel to destinations where there is a demand for this kind of travel. And up on our hilltop is a great place to encourage bicycle activity because it's a little flatter than many other parts of the city. Not to say we don't encourage it in the rest of the city as well. So when we're doing our Molalla Avenue realignment project with Warner Milne Road, and that includes reconstructing the pavement between Beaver Creek Road and Molalla Avenue on Warner Milne. And what it raised the issue of it, looking at our transportation system plan and trying to encourage access to bicycle travel in Oregon City. We thought we really ought to look at restriping that section of roadway and look at eliminating the center turn lane and adding bike lanes, so replacing the center turn lane with bike lanes. So because of the rushed nature of our ARA design and contract document preparation, we, as a basic city engineer recommendation, I said, let's put it in the striping plans, but we definitely need to do a traffic engineering study to make sure that this is an appropriate measure to take. So now that the project's gone on, we hired DKS and Associates, who was actually the traffic consultant on the project as well, so they're familiar with the area, to go ahead and study that section of Warner Milne Road for the appropriateness of adding the bike lanes. And we have Peter Coffey here from DKS. Peter, there you are. Why don't you come up? He's going to give you a short presentation on the findings of their study. And then I might add that we also once we had their report, we took it to the Transportation Advisory Committee to make sure they're aware of the situation and to get their opinion and feedback. And then we also had a stakeholders open house, which we tried to invite as many people as possible in that area. Unfortunately, we didn't get much of a turnout, but that's okay. We definitely held a stakeholders meeting. And then in the time being, we've gotten several letters, which are in your packets, one of which we provided a formal response to from an individual. So Peter will give a presentation, and then we're hoping that you can support the recommendation of the traffic study as well as the Transportation Advisory Committee and myself to restripe as we've discussed. Looks like it might just be a minute. I might add, since I've got another minute or two, I think what was added to let's see, we had a letter that Alvita received, and she provided a formal response that was in your packet as of Friday, I believe. And in the same packet, we had a letter from a number of county employees that are now up at Red Soils that believe that providing bike lanes on that stretch of Warner Milne would be very beneficial to their traveling in the area. And then most recently, I think it was yesterday or the day before, we received a letter from an attorney for the Danielson's Hilltop Mall, and there are some questions about the timing of the restriping to allow the bike lanes and take away the center turn lane. And I think Peter will talk about that briefly, but there actually has been there has not been a formal application for redevelopment of that site. And in terms of timing, what we are actually recommending is that we restripe them, and then we keep an eye on it and see how things are working out. So it kind of, the timing is a little critical for us because our contractor will be striping that section. I don't have the exact date because the construction schedule is somewhat fluid, but it'll be within the next couple of months. So we'd rather, to wait might not be the most efficient use of the project dollars.
So while we're waiting on pulling up the information, what would be the cost difference in a delay? You suggested that we don't get both, we get one or the other, correct? That's the option
right,
we're talking about. So if it were laid down one direction and didn't work, or one way, what's the cost of changing it later?
Well, the cost of changing it later, it would be one of the problems with changing it, to be honest with you. I mean, even if we put it in place and monitored it and found a problem with it, whenever you grind off striping from a brand new pavement, it's kind of sad. And so in either case, I think we should try to make the best decision we can now, rather than just delay the decision until a development application is approved. And we can talk about this more later, but that particular commercial development site has 7 accesses, five of which are off of the major arterials, which are Molalla Avenue and Beaver Creek Road. The 2 minor accesses are off of Warner Milne Road, and we don't expect there to be many folks that would make left turns off of Warner Milne to enter the shopping center. We expect people approaching from that direction to travel on Molalla Avenue and turn right into the shopping center at their signalized intersection. So again, we don't have a traffic study for that development. We don't have an actual application. And I think the other thing we want to maybe note here is that, going back to the mentioning you had at the urban renewal meeting, Madam Mayor, was about the carbon impacts and how we need to look at reducing greenhouse gases. And one of the ways we can do it is to improve access to bikeways in Oregon City so that people are safer and feel more comfortable riding their bikes to destinations. So this is an example of something that would be a very tiny little incremental thing to do moving in that direction. Ready?
I'm ready. Thank you for your patience. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners, and Nancy does a great job of filling time, so while you're going. It was. So two slides I'm going to show you. So there's one in the board and has some different quadrants. So in the upper left corner, what I'm showing you is a cross-section of Warner Milne Road. It says Warner Milne Road cross-section. So Warner Milne Road is classified as a minor arterial. So this cross-section you see on the screen in the upper left is a cross-section of the minor arterial, and there are different elements in that, including sidewalks and travel lanes. And then you can also see some asterisks on there as well. And those asterisks show their optional lanes. So on a minor arterial, you could have 2 lanes in each direction or 1 lane in each direction. So, and on our road, we're just going to have 1 lane in each direction. So that's what the asterisks are for. So what's important to note here, though, is in the center left turn lane, there's an asterisk on that center left turn lane, meaning it's an optional element. You know, if we need a center left turn lane, their option is there. So it's not a required element. Whereas if you look at the cross-section for the bike lanes, can you see where it says 6-foot bike lane? There's no asterisk there. So we're saying really it's a required element. So I think that's important to note. It's a little fuzzy there. That's okay. That's okay. I want you to be able to. So is that clear? So, there's ideally, we'd like to have the center left turn lane and the bike lane, but in this case, the center left turn lane is considered optional, and the bike lane is more of a required element. In the lower left corner, you see a list of minor arterials in the city: Abernathy Road, Holmes Lane, Lynn Avenue, and which of these have bike lanes and which of these have 2-way left turn lanes. So you can see the list includes, there's 7 or 8 of them with bike lanes and no 2-way left turn lane, and the only one that has the 2-way left turn lane without the bike lane is Abernathy. So doing something like we're talking about doing, it wouldn't be the first time we've done it in the city. There's lots of precedents in the city. In the upper right-hand corner, you see a page cut out of the existing transportation plan, and one of the projects listed there is to put on bike lanes on this section of Warner Milne Road from Lynn to Molalla Avenue, and you can see one of the recommended improvement there is to put in striped bike lanes. So this project's been identified in the TSP, in the 1994 adopted TSP, so it's there. In the bottom right, there's a list of 3 city policies and 3 metro policies, and Nancy got into this a little bit, and I don't need to read them verbatim for you, but these are transportation-related goals and policies, and they relate, one of them, they relate to a decrease in vehicles miles traveled, and we think we can achieve a decrease in vehicles miles traveled by encouraging people to ride their bikes, and certainly the bike lanes will encourage people to ride their bikes. Will encourage multimodal travel using the bicycles as opposed to a motor vehicle or another facility. And the third key point here is a reduction in vehicle emissions that we think we can achieve, again, by reducing the VMT, by encouraging an alternative mode. So I have a second slide that I've just turned to, and this relates to some of the traffic analysis work that we've done. I'm going to start again in the upper left-hand corner. Today, there's about 7,600 vehicles a day traveling on the road, about 3,800 per direction. The posted speed is 30 miles an hour, and what we call the 85th percentile speed is 33 miles an hour. So the 85th percentile speed at 33, about 85% of the cars are traveling at 33 miles an hour or below, and about 15% are traveling above that.
Some sit on that road. Okay.
Right on. I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, I think that's pretty good. If we posted at 30, yeah, no, that's okay. So I think we're pretty good there. You know, when we concern is that 85th is 5 or 10 miles above. I think that's right where we should be there. But I bring up these points because there's two common thresholds for providing bike lanes that we commonly use. One is the volume. We'd like to provide designated striped bike lanes on roads with over 3,000 cars a day, and we have that. And also when the speeds are greater than 25 miles an hour. Those are, you know, types of facilities we'd like to provide, you know, dedicated bike lanes, as opposed to maybe a residential street where the volume's lower and the speeds are lower. Then generally we don't see striped bike lanes. But on this type of facility, this is saying, hey, we'd like to do this. We've also looked in the lower left some driveway analysis results. We looked at left turn lane warrants because we also, you know, when do we need dedicated left turn lanes? And there's certain volume thresholds and speed thresholds. So we've done traffic counts at the driveways in this section of road, and we've done our analysis, and there are no driveways that meet the requirement for a left turn lane. So we've done the analysis. The left turn lanes are not warranted. Also, we looked at operating conditions in terms of what's the level of service at these intersections. And the city has a standard. And the city standard is level of service E is the standard, and the analysis we've done, we're meeting level of service C or better our driveway. So we're meeting the standard either with or without the two-way left turn. So essentially we don't have the two-way left turn. If we had the bike lanes, we're still meeting city standard in terms of level of service. There's 2 collisions that were reported, that we have reported between 2006 and 2008, and I've listed those below. So on the right-hand side, a summary of our analysis. We looked at the two-way left turn lanes, and the two-way left turn lanes could be helpful on facilities like this. Generally, they're helpful in facilities where you have lots of driveways, and we do have a fair number of driveways on these type of facilities, and we don't have high concentrations. We have lots of driveways, and they aren't all concentrated in one place. They're spread out. So that would be a place where we would like the two-way left turn lanes, ideally. And there's no identified safety concerns today that we have. So those were some reasons why we might want it. But then there are also some reasons why maybe we don't need the two-way left turn lanes. One, the two-way left turn lanes don't meet warrants. We did the analysis that the dedicated left turn lanes aren't warranted, and they operate at the city's standard. So those are 2 reasons why maybe we don't have it. So then we got into, well, okay, why would the bike lanes be more important than the two-way left turn lanes? So we listed some reasons through here. One would be because as I talked before, in the city standard, the bike lanes are more or less of a required element on the cross section that I first talked about. The left turn lane is an optional element. We think the bike lanes can help the city meet some of their goals in terms of VMT reduction and providing multimodal facilities. That would be a second reason. The bike lanes previously identified were a high priority project on the TSP. It was already identified in the TSP. There was a project to put in bike lanes in this facility. And we meet the criteria. We talked about the volume, the speed, wanting those. And also we talked about other minor arterials in the city that, this would not be unusual. This would be probably, common and consistent with everything we've done. So the other thing we could do is once we do this is maybe we could do a before and after step. We put in the bike lanes, take out the two-way left turn lane. We could come back in a couple of years and see, okay, have we achieved what we wanted to? Are we encouraging bike travel? And then on the other side, have we caused an increase of collisions? So that would be something we could do once the project's done or once we put in the bike lanes. So that's what I have for you so far in terms of analysis, and therefore a recommendation to the city to go ahead and put in the dedicated bike lanes and remove that part of the two-way left turn lane.
Several people have asked about your bike numbers, and so you did the traffic counts in January. Did you do bicycle counts in January?
We did the best. Yeah, we did the best we could. There's also bikes that use some of the sidewalks as well on there. And one thing about these counts is what we just found out is some of the bike data here included motorcycles as well. So I would not use the bike count. I think January is not a great time to count the bikes as well. So I think that's not a concern. as well.
Okay.
So I wouldn't focus on that number right now.
Yeah, because that seems like a really, actually a
I
high number.
never. For the summer, not, but for the winter, I could see, depending on what day it is. I think in the winter, it's going to fluctuate by
And
day.
that isn't counting people turning on the other end of Warner Milne to the county. It is, the count was only in this segment?
In this segment, right.
Okay, and it was observed?
Yes.
It was an observed count?
Yes. So I would expect to be higher in the summer.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Commissioner West.
Mayor Norris was saying that the counts were done in January. I was looking at your reports, and what was done in the summer of 2008 and July of, were those the traffic analysis?
Two other things what we did is, because we wanted to do counts of the driveways, okay? And so we did the counts of the driveways in the winter month, okay, but that's what we had. But also they were doing construction on the road when we did the counts. Okay, so we thought maybe some of the through traffic would be down. So what we did is we counted how many cars were going in and out of the driveways during the winter month, and then we went back to some other historical data that was the summertime counts to get the volume of through traffic. So we merged the two together because at the time, as Nancy talked about, we had to make a decision now, and so we got the best information available that we could at the time. So we took the combination of the two. That's what we did.
Yeah, well, the reason I was asking is because of the letter from Danielson's attorney saying that now the shopping center is closed, but most of this data was collected before it was closed. So, granted, there was construction and some other things. So.
Right.
And I did not realize, I never counted them up, how many other ways of going in and out of the that whole shopping center area would be. And I would imagine this would be a kind of a habit thing. So you're just changing drivers' habits. So now, for instance, I live below the hill, so I do always go into Danielson's that way.
So you turn right at Warner Millie and then...
Yeah,
and then
I always do.
Right.
But if I knew there wasn't a left turn there, now you could hit the exit for the egress from or ingress from KFC, and then there's the next one at the McDonald's, or there's multiple ways. And isn't there a light now? There's a light, of course, at Beaver Creek and Molalla, but farther down in Beaver Creek between Molalla and the county, isn't there a light in there behind Danielson's?
Yeah, there is.
Yes. So that really helped too. I use that shortcut now sometimes. And I imagine that'll all be reoriented.
And actually, we can't really speculate on what their land use application would look like or what the conditions of approval could be. But if it was a brand new development, it would likely include frontage improvements, and given their location on arterials, we would expect the developer to construct roadway improvements that are consistent with our design standards for the minor arterial, in this case for Warner Milne Road, and arterial for Molalla. So that's not the case for this because it's redevelopment, and we haven't even seen the land use application. So setting that aside, it's just another piece of information for you.
I would be likely to support this, especially in light of that we have some time with their no land use application in yet to kind of do a little bit of a before and after, before and after the see if it was redeveloped.
Piggyback on that just a little bit because the Danielson letter does talk about the fact that when you did the traffic counts, they were limiting tenants in their development, and that they speculate that the new development will have up to 3 times as much traffic. So could you comment on, Nancy added a couple pieces to the puzzle, but could you comment on if that might be so, how might...
Hypothetically or
how
hypothetically.
would that all work together? Because I understand that there's some moving parts.
Well, I think a couple things is, I think one is, as Commissioner West talked about, is we had northbound, primarily the people who are going to turn left on Warner and Milne into one of the Danielson's driveway, primarily they're going to be coming southbound on Molalla, right? So they're coming southbound Molalla, and they choose to turn right on Warner Milne. And then, so they have multiple options. We talked about the 7 different ways in there. So they could certainly travel straight through and then turn right at one of the other 2 driveways. Let's say they continue to do what they're doing, Commissioner West, and turn right at Warner Milne. There's 2 driveways they can turn out. So, we've done our analysis, and there's still capacity to have more people turn left before left turn lane would be warranted. So we could, because we talked about, we don't part of their land use application that they get analyzed and determined. And so there's no, it may need a warrant, it may not, but as part of the land use application, the traffic study for that would determine does it need it or not, and then there could be mitigations or improvements tied to the land use application.
Or they might make the claim that rather than having to do mitigation, the traffic would end up being directed to another access point.
Right, right.
Okay, the only thing that I've observed many times is going toward, which direction is it? Coming from Lynn Avenue towards Molalla Avenue.
And eastbound.
And east. And then there's a turn left on Molalla Avenue. That will remain, right?
That will remain.
That will remain. That's often stacked up past that first entrance.
And so what we are proposing in the modifications is to make that left turn lane longer. So that's what's in the proposed plan.
Okay.
Yeah, because it does
widening
back up a little bit there.
And I think it's important for you to remember that for a development to have 7 accesses off of arterial systems is really very generous. And in many cases, if we're trying to preserve the capacity of the roadway, we will do access management, which is what we did on Beaver Creek Road, where we actually try to consolidate the accesses, have as few as possible, have as few conflicts as possible. At this point, based on the traffic conditions and improvements that we're just making, and the study, it shows that our levels of service are fine on Warner Milne. No need to do a big access management thing, but just keeping in mind that 7 driveways is a generous amount of accesses for development.
Thank you. Commissioner Neely.
My big concern is, of course, on our two-way streets, having the left turns of the bicycles are going to have to shift into left turn lane to make their turns. Is that correct?
Bicycles?
No. We got the bike lane.
We have the bike lane now. No,
It's on the right.
it's on the right.
Yeah. And of course, there's no problem for a bicycle to turn right onto Warner Milne.
Correct.
But in terms of a left turn, they have to get into traffic, or do you have a lane?
Yeah, the cyclist would have to make a decision, and a more slow cyclist, a more experienced cyclist can legally get into the through lane and turn left.
I understand that. Has there been any way to figure out how to stripe things to make the bicyclists aware when they, at the time they should get into that particular lane, and so also the auto driver in the where it's coming. What kind of striping that you can do at all?
There's different treatments that we've tried. In this case, there's no left turn lane to get into. So, I mean, they could have
the traffic.
They would have to get in. Yeah, they would have to get into the through lane, right? If they wanted to turn left.
Right.
So, probably not for this particular case. I mean, there are other treatments that can be done in terms of different colored pavements or different striping. If you're in downtown Portland, they're testing green and you see green and bike and different things and different, dash lines as opposed to a solid line. But probably not for this example. We probably wouldn't do anything right here.
And I might add that if a cyclist might also prefer to go through the traffic signal at Warner Milne Molalla and proceed just straight on the right side of the. Now we still lack bike lanes between the McDonald's access, the signalized intersection McDonald's, and Warner Milne Road on both sides of Molalla. So that we're not certain when that could occur, but that's still a need for that segment of Molalla Avenue.
Commissioner Nocita.
I want to make sure from the sketches, because I'm not sure I understand them, the creation of the bike lanes does not require elimination of the center refuge lane on Warner Milne.
Yes, it does.
It does?
Yes.
It does.
Okay.
You can't have both with this right-of-way
Okay.
that we have.
So there will be a center turn lane, though, near Molalla. All right. So the pavement will be wider at Molalla. So there'll be 3 lanes plus bike lanes at the intersection of Molalla. But as we get about 300 feet to the west, then it narrows down from 3 auto lanes to 2 auto lanes.
Okay. And how about at the intersection with Beaver Creek?
There's a left turn lane there.
For the remainder of that stretch, there will be no center lane.
So that's turn left. And that's what they did our analysis on, is if there was no lane, how would it operate?
Well, let me express my concern on this, because I haven't even heard it mentioned yet. I did get a call from a citizen who had lived in Oregon City since the 70s, and he remembered the time prior to the installation of the center lane when it was 2 lanes, and the stacking was terrible, according to him, his recollection. So now we're kind of going back to that. When we're a larger city with more traffic generated development, like the county complex that wasn't there back then. And now, one of my concerns that we don't have a center lane is the police station, because the times that I've seen police cars in and out of that station, I've almost always seen them tear onto Warner Milling Road to go either right or left on Warner Milling. I have not seen police cars, rev up and zip through the shopping center mall, or the shopping center so much. That one exit for that police station, as it stands currently, is on Warner Milling Road. And if we get into situations where, because we've taken out the center lane, and we get, rush hours with Warner Milling stacked up very heavily because, we've not given an emergency vehicle like a police car in an emergency the ability to use that center refuge lane in an emergency situation. And I'm just wondering to what extent that's even been considered as part of this restricting analysis.
I think it has, in terms of how we looked at the traffic volumes, we analyzed the intersection. It's hard for me to comment on someone's perception from 5 years ago on. It was suggested because it's hard to put it in context in terms of what intersection. I mean, the bottlenecks of the road are at Beaver Creek Road and Molalla. We have 3-lane roads. We have 3-lane sections there. We have dedicated left turn lanes there. So the concern is the middle part where we would not have the center left.
Did you consult with the police department on this?
No, we haven't talked to them about that. Okay. So.
I'm not ready to approve this until that consultation takes place.
Yeah, well, we feel what we do is give count to the driveways and get an understanding. We have a good understanding of the volume of traffic on the road, and we feel good about the recommendation of the need, because we haven't found the need, because the driveways are not, there's no real heavy driveways along there. They're all lightly turned, and the counts verify that. So.
I would like to add too that if it was in the 70s, that was before Beaver Creek Road was constructed. And at this point, Beaver Creek Road is considered the major arterial through that area, and Warner Milling is a parallel minor arterial. And I can totally understand if Warner Milling was carrying the amount of traffic to Beaver Creek.
Yes,
the other thing, if cars pull over as they should when an emergency vehicle comes through, there's still space in the pavement to allow a police car to get through.
The bike lane, essentially the bike lane with a 6-foot shoulder, and that's where the cars
so
drive.
Both pull over, you can drive down the middle. But I think, and I agree that's a very important criteria. I think something we haven't talked about, though, is the safety of the cyclists on the roadway. And right now, they're riding in the paved area or on the sidewalks. And those sidewalks they're not very wide sidewalks, and it is a heavily, believe it or not, there's a lot of bicycle and pedestrian traffic in that area. There's utility poles on those sidewalks. And so sharing the sidewalk with a cyclist and a pedestrian is really not comfortable. And so I would like just to remind that it's important to consider the safety of the cyclists in that situation.
It's a balancing act. I mean, I think it would be nice to have everything, have the right way to do everything. I think this is a trade-off in terms of multimodal travel and what are we encouraging. I think this is a good example. We've tried to document the data on why this is a good example of, we think we can take out the center left turn light, and the benefits to the other multimodal travel outweighs the center left turn.
And Molalla Avenue is also one of our primary transit corridors, and something that we're really supposed to be doing throughout the region is providing much better facilities for bicycles and pedestrians to get to mass transit. So that's just another thing to consider.
It's an interesting question, because I think Commissioner Nocita brings up a good point, because there is a lot of emergency vehicles. Police can respond out of the area quite a bit. And I know a lot of times just driving out there myself, it's hard to see some of the pedestrian or cyclists that come in and out of there, because it's a quite heavily traveled area. I guess just without really thinking through it too much, I think there's a couple things I should mention. That it's incumbent upon police officers when they enter a roadway, whether they're responding to emergency or not, to make sure that they enter that roadway safely. And I think that's an issue that needs to be addressed. We've never had an issue there before, but sometimes, maybe they should take a little bit better look when they go out there. But having said that, I think almost the added safety that it would give the pedestrians and the bicyclists is a little bit more of a pressing matter, I would say, than the other vehicles that might be on the roadway. Because then again, the officers have a responsibility for the end of that roadway to do so in a safe manner. But it's an interesting thought.
Commissioner Neely.
It's more for where it comes from, but the nuances on the bike lanes is the standards of what jurisdiction?
Oregon City.
Ours.
Oh, those are Oregon City standards.
Okay.
And granted, those are for new roads constructed, but as you do retrofits, there's something to consider.
Okay.
Commissioner West.
Well, I think that I would be ready to make a motion to approve this with Warner Milne Road restriping with the bike lanes from west of Malala Avenue to Beaver Creek Road, and with the option to reevaluate this in 6 months to a year, and if it's a problem for police, and we can change it, or Danielson's. But I think we should give it a try. It's a fair shake. Give alternative multimodal transportation and bikers and pedestrians safer places to walk, and also be on the roads and share the roads too. I think it's the right thing to do for the future.
Was that a motion?
That was a motion, a long one.
Would you like to summarize?
I move to approve the Milne Road restriping with bike lanes from west of Malala Avenue to Beaver Creek Road, subject to a before and after study.
Can I have a second?
I'll second, but I think there might have been a member of the audience who wants to speak to it.
Yes. Moved by Commissioner West, seconded by Commissioner Neely. Is there further comment or discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the vote please, Nancy.
Yeah, nice. Well, we couldn't have the comments from the audience.
I didn't see any.
Well, I thought I saw him.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Please come forward.
Sometime.
Well, good. I have to
Mayor and City Commissioners, thank you. My name is William Gifford. I live in Oregon City, and I am also the land use chair for the Hillendale Neighborhood Association. We had a meeting last night, and I apologize that this subject was not on the agenda. It's still a growing process for the Neighborhood Association. We aren't quite up on all of the issues yet, but I do know that that there is a concern in the neighborhood about transportation, of course, which is always the biggest issue. I want to raise a couple of points, and because this has not been discussed with the Neighborhood Association, I'm just going to speak as a private citizen because I also happen to live 3 blocks from this intersection. One is, Mr. Crutcher mentioned the cost of restriping, and of course we're going to make the best decision as we can right now. My suspicion is, we also had a presentation, as an aside, we had a presentation regarding the master plan for the Hilltop development, and from my take on it, it looked as though because they are reorienting the whole footprint of the grocery store back towards Beaver Creek. But my suspicion is most of the access is going to be coming off of Beaver Creek and Warner Milne and Molalla rather than from Warner Milne. So I don't think that if there's traffic increase, and of course everybody hopes that there is, I mean certainly Safeway does, that increase would not be coming from Warner Milne. The other comment that I wanted to make was the very perceptive comment about the police access. And of course, my hope would possibly even be the potential for library access there as well. But just had to get that in there. Well, this is something that Mr. Daniels had brought up earlier about the possibility of having a joint facility. The fire stations have the option of having a traffic light, an emergency traffic light. So when their vehicles come out and it's an emergency, oncoming traffic is a red light. And maybe that's something that could be considered for the police department when it's expanded, as it properly should be, that for emergencies, not for somebody on their way to lunch,
you know, but for emergency, exiting that area is possible. They could have a light there.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments? Commissioner Nocita.
I'd like to get a summary of what public processes has gone through. I mean, we're discussing here, we're taking public comment, and it's been before the TAC.
Well, actually, the very first public process it went through was when we adopted our TSP, and it's a project in the TSP to add bike lanes to Warner Milne Road. That didn't necessarily include elimination of the two-way center turn lane. So it went. We had a meeting with the Transportation Advisory Committee, and at that meeting there were several visitors, including Joe Merrick, who's the county traffic engineer, who's also an avid cyclist. So we got some good professional eyes on it there. And then we sent out an invitation for a stakeholders meeting, and I think it was probably about 50 invitations. At least 50 invitations for people that live on or work or own property on Warner Milne Road in that area that would have an interest in this. And then, and now we're here.
Thank you. And to get back to Commissioner West's motion, Commissioner West, your motion includes a review of this restriping after what period of time?
Well, I don't know what's reasonable. What's reasonable? 6 months, a year? How about,
2 years, because you would want some conversion data, so.
And this is a good one, in terms of making a change, because the road has been under construction and the intersection is getting completely realigned, which will also help that left turn queue, because we're going to be able to operate that signal much more efficiently with a four-way, without the offset intersection. I think that it's a good time to make a change because people they're not used to the same old thing along that stretch of roadway.
So, would you accept 1 year as an amendment to your motion?
Well,
I wouldn't want it to go more than a year.
Well, the consultant is saying 2 years, and if Safeway doesn't even have an application in yet, by the time that's even built, if they don't have an application in, I'm not sure what the process would be. It can't be under a year that could even happen at this point, could it? Planning?
It'll be a while.
To be determined.
Yeah.
I'd like to move an amendment to make the review a year after 1 year.
I guess there's no problem doing a review after a year, even if Safeway's not, it doesn't preclude us making a review again at some point either.
It costs money, so.
Yeah.
So I think they only want to do it.
Well, you want to do it where it's a worthwhile reason to do it. It's not just the time for the sake of time.
Jim, could I suggest that after the Safeway is up and running or something like that? I mean, that would give it a. Because that's one of the big factors.
To me, some of the issues like police access are going to be evident right away. We're not going to have to wait for Safeway to.
It's a big impact.
Oh. If that's how you feel, I mean, I respect that you're voting that way, but I think the change in the situation, at least towards my concerns, are going to be evident well before the Safeway comes in.
Is there a second to the amendment? Amendment dies for lack of a second. Okay, back to the main motion. Any more comments or concerns? All right, Nancy, the vote, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mayor Norris.
Aye, motion passes 4-1. Thank you very much. Ready for the break?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
could you take a quick one? At 22, we'll reconvene.
announcements and several updates. They're really important. Our matching fund program. So, Mary Norris, should you have a fund of, say, $2?
Have you been in the records?
No, I haven't. Sample. You come in with $1 and we will match you $1. Okay. So it just helps people, some of those funds and encourage that. 1 week only. Another announcement is that our fine friends of the library will be holding another book sale for us to help us make good use of all the materials which we are reading from the library in order not to move them or put them in storage.
And the sale's at the library.
The sale is next door to the existing library where the sale was just a few weeks ago. And it will be on May 7th and 8th, which is Friday and Saturday right before Mother's Day. So come on down and buy your mother a present at the Friends of the Library book sale. And I just want to let you know that we will be reading a lot of materials that people will be sorry to see go, but they're definitely not worth paying money to put them in storage. It would be materials like video cassettes and audio cassettes because we can no longer replace those items. Manufacturers are not making them, so this is a very good time for us to make good use of them by getting them out in the general public. Okay? So I'm prepared to hear unhappy people's thoughts about that, though, because they are popular, but we can't get new ones and replace the old ones. So, as an update, I'm very sorry that I could not present a sales contract to you tonight. There are still ongoing negotiations, and some of the stages have taken quite a bit of time. But anyway, one of the things that we found out just recently, right 2 days ago, was that in the 1924 deed from the county to the school district, there was a deed restriction placed in it that said that if the school district ever sold if the property ever stopped being used as a public school or a public park, then the property would revert to the county. So, so we just needed to do a little investigation around that because, why pursue the purchase of something if it could not be used as a public library? So, our attorneys have investigated that and spoken with the county attorneys and county officials, and this will not be any problem at all to get a release from that restriction from the county, but it will take some time. And what we will do then is add that as a contingency clause into our sales agreement so that will have to be met before the closing will take place. And then we're still in negotiations on the tenants that are currently in the school building right now and the timing of the closing and those kinds of things. So,
how about price?
There's not an active conversation about that, but I know that you want us to look into that. So, like I said, ongoing negotiations. That's one thing the contract was not ready for tonight. So,
well, if contract negotiations are ongoing, I'm going to venture to make a motion to offer.
Yeah, this is not a decision. It's not advertised as a decision.
It's not advertised as a decision. I'm going to turn to our assistant city attorney and ask about.
We don't have it on the agenda to take a vote today. We were presenting an update of where we are in the contract negotiations.
Mr. Smith just left the room
Yeah.
because
Does that actually preclude us by Robert's Rules of Order from doing things like making a motion on a purchase price?
Take whatever action you want to take as a commission on take a position. Nothing precludes you from doing that.
Including making a motion.
You can make a motion. You instruct
Our city manager is an attorney also, so a little nervous about that, but I don't want to dispute what our attorney is telling us, but I think the point is that you can express your view and your concern, and of course the staff would be happy to incorporate those or pass those concerns along in the negotiations with the county or the school district. My concern is because the only thing that's on the agenda is a commission report. So if you make a motion to have some effective action, I think the mayor was hinting at this. It's not been properly noticed for action item under the Open Records Law, and that would be my concern. Is it's not noticed as an action item. We could certainly put it on there for a future agenda, but it's not on there tonight that way. So I think that could invite. I'm not sure that would comport with the Open Records Law. You concur with that?
I think that there is an issue of what is on the agenda and what we have put forth to do, but that doesn't mean that you can instruct staff to take certain actions, and it doesn't matter whether it's a motion or not. So you can tell staff to negotiate in a different direction.
And you're saying that I can make that motion tonight?
Make that request, and we will follow through. It doesn't need a motion.
A request is
well, it seems to me that it needs a vote, though, because I don't want to do this.
Throw out what you're thinking, and maybe.
Well, I'm just want to be consistent with the position I've taken on this, that I don't think the $4 million purchase price is the responsible purchase price for our taxpayers, and I want to move actually that we offer the school board the appraised price of $2.9 million.
I think we've already actually dealt with that.
I don't think we did, because the way it was framed.
The motion was framed at no price.
Yep, that's exactly right. I mean, the motion was to move forward, and I voted for that motion because that a specific purchase price could be zeroed in on at a future meeting. And when I saw this as an agenda item tonight, I think that was the appropriate time to, get us all on record on what is and is not an appropriate purchase price.
Okay, we are in the middle of negotiations, and there are a bunch of negotiation points that our director is working with, and that is part of the mix. So, would you like to discuss that first, or I don't know. This motion is it?
It would be appropriate for you to discuss your position and see whether your fellow commissioners are on that
page.
On that position.
Okay.
I don't think anybody is against being the best price negotiations. I don't know what that price is. I mean, I know what the appraised value was. I heard the arguments why it should or might be higher. I would suggest that the city manager work with the library director to get the best price they possibly could.
Yes. And I would suggest that that all of the pieces of the contract are moving parts that, to me, also impact that price. Maybe not here, but maybe a little over here. So, all negotiations to give and take, and I guess it would be my view that to give the city manager and the director flexibility to work within the framework. So, others, Commissioner West.
It's been my understanding that we have, Mr. Patterson, the city manager, and Maureen, the library director, have brought this price issue up several times months ago, and that they have come back and said this is their price. So I'm affirmative to, you want to add it to your discussions, but not at the risk of losing the deal, because it's my understanding that that's what they want. And they've given us many other things that we need, such as terms and an interest rate, and letting us get in when we need to get in. So, but you're welcome to do it, but I don't want to see the deal lost over price.
Maybe you can revert back to the county and I'll buy itself just for $3 million.
They need money as well.
Well, and if the commission would want, if you want to have a greater discussion about price, we might want to do that in an executive session that we could set up at another time.
I was just going to say we had had a discussion. This is a new.
Why don't you continue with your report, please?
For 2 weeks, so that now. And so what I have tentatively is that we will probably close the library for a period of time in order to move out and to move into the new location. So we'll probably close the weekend of June 12th. And reopen, hopefully in the Carnegie Center. As far as moving into the Carnegie, we are moving forward with the change of use application. That was filed yesterday. Our pre-application hearing is next Thursday. I have visited with the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association Steering Committee, and I will go back and speak with the regular association meeting on May 6th, and that seems to be moving forward very well. So, let's see. As instructed, we also looked into the other option.
Option B, which is already in the press.
Yeah. And surprisingly, it turned out that at that option, parking was a much bigger issue than at the Carnegie. Yeah, because there's not really as much dedicated parking for the amount of space that we would be renting. So that became a much bigger issue.
And may I just ask how that was determined?
Yeah, Tony used a 3 per 1,000 square foot, so 3 parking spaces per 1,000 square foot. And since that was closer to like 9,000 square feet, that required more parking, and they have that dedicated space out back, which is 14 spaces or something. It's very much short of what we needed. Yeah. And then
I'll pose a question. I mean, since we're on this discussion, can I pose a question?
Oh.
Are we able to restrict parking at the Carnegie on the periphery street, right around the periphery of it, to the library only?
Able to restrict on that block on the Carnegie side?
That may be I don't know who that's a question for.
I don't know. But just remember that in addition to on the block itself, we have we own parking lots across the street, and there's actually signs up there that says, this is parking for the Carnegie Center. Still there.
You're talking over the fire station, isn't it? But that's pretty limited.
Yeah, but I mean, it's in addition.
My question, I mean, we get a lot of people coming into the library, and I think this is something I would like you to explore, is whether we can actually restrict all the parking directly around the Carnegie to library patrons for that temporary period. Because there's a lot of, oftentimes there's a lot of cars parked in front of the library.
Yeah, and it's difficult for us to anticipate what that use will look like in a space that has restricted services.
Look at it.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Okay. And so in addition to the lack of ADA access to the second floor in option D, and the fact that it would be difficult to get it fixed up in time for now we know when our move date is, we would like to proceed fully with the Carnegie as our primary option because we feel that we'll be successful with our change of use permit.
It's our cheapest option, too.
And it's our cheapest option, yeah. And so we've already started looking at, what the moving will really look like as far as IT and all that kind of stuff. Let's see here. That's that. Then you may have received an email from Dan Berg. He
owns an interest in some property. It's the industrial buildings. There's 4 of them on Beaver Creek. It's like if you head south on Beaver Creek towards the county property, it's on your right, and there's 4 almost identical buildings in there. One that he has an interest in, and that would be the best size for the library that he wanted us to look at, is back away from the street. So there's absolutely no street viewing access to it. So he just out of the blue kind of said, are you interested in looking at this? I would be interested in offering you financing for it. And I said, so I went over with Matt Newstrom, who's helping me with a bunch of this stuff, and we looked at it. And what we discovered is that parking, this would be as a permanent option. Parking would be very limited. The expansion spaces all for parking would be all owned by the county. And there's no street exposure, which I feel is actually very important to a library, and one of the things that makes the mall location not appealing to me. The ownership of the building is a condominium style ownership, which means that, you know, we would not have exclusive control over the entire property. And just so you know the price and the size, the building is about 20,000 square feet. It's $2.4 million, and an estimated remodel would be another $2 million. So, in some respects, we're comparing apples to apples. In some respects, we're not. You know, it's not the land that Eastham is, and it's also not zoned for a library. So, you know, we looked into it. This happened while Larry was here. I had my consultant look at it with me, and you know, I just don't think that it's nearly as good of a location because it's off the street, it's restricted parking. You know, it looks good to start with, but then you start running into a lot of problems with it. So I just wanted to let you know that was investigated.
Okay, any questions of Mo? I have a couple of citizens of signed up to speak. Linda Van Haverbeek. Van Haverbeek, Oregon City resident. Good evening. I've been waiting to talk to you, and I'm glad that you're willing to listen to me. 2 meetings ago, 5 weeks ago, the Friends of the Library came forward and told you that we support this. 1 meeting ago, 3 weeks ago, the Library Board came forward and told you that they're in favor of the purchase of Eastham, and I wanted to remind you of that. And I want to remind you that we've been in a temporary location for 15 years, and it's time to take action, and it's time to get going. I don't know if you're all aware that we have formed, and paperwork has been filed for a library foundation, and that we've been working on this goal for quite a long time. And so many of the people who are friends of the library and or who are on the library board have been active in this, and that we're willing to work as we get to the additional phases of making Eastham a real library, of helping to raise funds, so that you know that. So thank you. William.
William Gifford here. A couple of things. First of all, I want to give kudos to Mo, especially for all the hard work that she's doing on this, and also for being open to exploring another option. That was, I think that's really showing some open-mindedness, and I appreciate that in our staff. The question I wanted to raise is whether or not there has ever been discussion about getting a second appraisal on the property. Serious discussion. Has there been any jocular discussion?
Well, yeah, Friday, and then we started it.
I mean, because one of the pivoting hang-ups seems to be the purchase price, and if we got appraised and it turned out that it was 3.9, it probably might not be as big of an issue. But if it came back and another one came in at 2.9, I think it might make a stronger case that we ought to reconsider it. So I just would like a serious discussion about it.
Thank you. any other thoughts?
Just ask, how long does it take to get a second appraiser?
And the cost?
And the cost of it.
It didn't happen before, but I didn't look into it. Okay,
Commissioner West.
We don't have it at our desks here tonight, but the appraisal, I was re-looking through this because I was trying to help myself get past the price issue. And the intro and I don't have it here, I wish I did so I could read the exact words. The intro and the conclusion of it was, when in this difficult economic climate, this appraisal is deemed less value than if it was a good economic climate. So in other words, the market kind of went flip-flop and no one knows what to think right now, and they were having a difficult time with picking a value. And if you look at all the properties they compared those with were schools from everything from schools and churches in Northeast Portland to land in Clackamas County. I mean, gee whiz, that's pretty broad look to try to get a solid, firm value from. But I would read it, but I don't have it here at my desk.
Okay, other speakers? Hearing none, thank you very much. And so we hope in 2 weeks there'll be an action item. Is that what we're hoping? Okay. Oh, yes, would you like to do that?
This is a clarification. Because this wasn't a decision item, I was up here for a short moment and then removed myself into the audience multiple times as it became a discussion. And the reason for that is I'm an employee of the Oregon City School District, and so in discussions about the city purchasing school district property, I haven't been participating in that.
Advice of our council. So thank you. Moving on the agenda, we're now next to consider a supplemental agreement number 6 to a personal services agreement for the Warner Milne Road, Malal Avenue intersection realignment, utility replacements, construction engineering, administration, monitoring, and inspection services with Wallace Engineering. So for the Commission report, Nancy.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. As you see before you there, we're asking you to add about $154,000 to the existing personal services agreement with Wallace Engineering to complete the construction phase of the Molalla Warner Milne project. Their original contract was approved for construction engineering, and the demand on their time and also additional construction activities have actually come up as previously weren't expected for the project as it evolved, have required that they have to spend considerable more time on the project. In fact, we actually listed 7 specific reasons for the need to increase their budget, and the project is taking longer to construct because we've had a lot of difficulties with the underground utilities out there. Not only have we run into manholes that we thought were structurally adequate to continue to use as we connected larger sewer pipes to them, these manholes were basically falling apart, and so we had to, and these are large manholes that we're making 12-inch pipe connections to, and so we had to replace manholes. We also had thought we could, when there's a culvert that crosses the road, and we thought we could save that for a project later on because we didn't want to add that to this project at this time. As it turned out, once we started constructing our water line in that area, the culvert was in much worse condition than we had anticipated. So that requires not only additional engineering work and approval work from ODOT and the agencies, but also the additional inspection time. And we were so grateful to get these ARA funds, but the paperwork that comes with this is just, well, Laura's not here, but she could definitely speak to, thank heavens we've had Laura from planning to help us from the staff perspective, but then the engineering review of all the paperwork and all the documentation for the contractor's work has been much more than we had expected originally. So, let's see, I think I covered almost everything. Yeah, I think I've covered it generally enough, and you can read the details. So these are all legitimate expenses for which we believe the consultant should be paid. Some of them haven't occurred yet. Because we're anticipating a longer construction period, we want to get your approval to expand the budget to cover their services through completion of the construction.
So this supplement is $154,000 and will come from the wastewater fund, water FCC's water fund, and water FCC's plus the stormwater fund.
That's right.
Right, okay. You have a motion on this one? Okay, Commissioner Neal.
Commissioner.
C. Supplemental agreement number 6. Yes. All right. May I have a motion, please? Commissioner West? Get on the floor.
Well, since I'm still green,
I
move the supplemental agreement number 6 to personal services agreement, Warner Road, Malone Avenue. Second.
At the risk of, I will say that the motion has been made by Commissioner Neely and seconded by Commissioner West. All right, now that order has been restored, is there anyone who wishes to speak further? Seeing none, Nancy, the vote, please.
Aye. Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye, but we can't help that the page rolls down on these.
You hit on the floor, it stays pretty much.
Just fine.
Old-fashioned.
Yes.
All right. Yes, aye. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the change order, another change order for Holden Boulevard pedestrian improvement project. And this is change order number, oops. Got a leaping agenda item. And so for this pedestrian project, Nancy, the staff report, please.
Yes, the Holcomb Boulevard pedestrian improvement project has required far more flagging hours than were anticipated in the original bid. And part of the reason was because we under-anticipated the flagging hours. And they weren't, sometimes flagging hours are counted as a lump sum item in bid documents. In this case, they were not. So these are legitimate hours the contractor has spent paying flaggers. So there's something that we feel like is an appropriate reimbursement. And then there was also a miscalculation on the concrete needed to do driveway replacements, the square footage, and that, again, it was the actual amount of concrete that was required to replace the driveways and the aprons was a certain amount, and we've tracked that. And these are all bid items that were already in items already in the bid with unit costs, and we're simply exceeding our estimate at the beginning of the project of work that was actually done. So the contractor has submitted a change order request for that time.
See if you could answer, excuse me, on the staff report, the motion will be to allow an increase of $93,000.
Yes.
But the funding source down here says it's only $46,500 from transportation SDCs.
That's correct. And the contract is with the city, and the change order is actually for the $93,000. We also have an intergovernmental agreement with Clackamas County, and we are splitting the construction costs with them. So the county will be paying half of this change order, and half comes from the city.
Thank you for the explanation. Other questions or a motion, please? I do have you on, Commissioner Neely.
Well, it's nice to hear the county's part of this, but my calculation says this is in excess of a 15% increase, and that seems like it's huge.
That's why it's coming to you. One of the reasons why it's coming to you. I don't want to make any excuses because we're accountable for these contracts. But this was both an engineering design and a construction document preparation and construction administration that we've done only with city staff. And the county staff did the design and the city staff's done the contract administration. And I think in the estimating of the work that needed to be done, it was simply underestimated for the flaggers, and it was an error for the concrete aprons. And we didn't have the benefit of having an outside consultant preparing these bid documents for us and doing the engineering cost estimates. And I would love to say that we do as good of a job as the consultants do, but there really is some expertise and a lot more resources that the consulting teams bring to these projects. We were trying to do this as cheap as possible, which we have, but there was a higher risk, I believe, in doing it this way.
Thank you. Further comments? Right, Nancy, do we have a motion? Oh, may I have a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the change order to Holcomb Boulevard pedestrian improvements contract with Carr Contractors to allow for an increase of $46,529.74 from our transportation SDCs.
And actually, because the contract is with the city, the change orders for the city, so I would prefer if you would approve the $93,000.
So I'll redo here to allow an increase of $93,059.48.
And a second?
I'll say for discussion.
Moved by Commissioner Wynn, seconded by Commissioner Neely. Would you like any discussion then?
I won't. This was still a bid construction effort, wasn't it?
Yes, but it's based on quantities.
Based on what?
Quantities.
It was not a lump sum, not to exceed.
But in terms of their bidding, why wasn't the bidder factoring in what the cost would be?
Well, what we did was we had them bid on a certain number of flagging hours and a certain amount of.
We established the hours.
That's right.
And there's no doubt in your mind that the additional hours are required.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't take this to you if I felt like it wasn't appropriate that we pay the contract for this work. And I regret that they were underestimated.
Commissioner Nocita.
What's the consequences if we say no to this?
I probably that's the city attorney, but I believe they would probably sue us. Cut to the chase, right?
Well, you need to look at what the agreement say before we could assess the risk, but it's possible.
You can always sue us.
You can always sue us.
So this is not money. This is money that's already been spent.
We have not paid this bill.
You have not paid it yet? No, excuse me. The work has been done. Yeah, work has been done. No bill has been paid. Yes, thank you. That's what I meant. Okay. Did you finish?
That's all the question.
Ready? Yeah, it was.
It was over.
Yeah. Okay, Nancy, the vote please.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Aye, but
Commissioner Nocita.
I mean, it's really embarrassing to be, put behind the gun like this to have to approve something like this when we don't have any control or oversight about how we get into this in the first place. And I don't know, what my tolerance would be for this continuing, or what we as a commission could do to ensure for the taxpayers that it doesn't happen with regularity. So I guess I would just, ask, and maybe this is a new issue for the city manager to take a look at, but it's really uncomfortable to be stuck behind the eight like this. And I don't know whether we don't have adequate procedures in place to make sure it doesn't happen, but I don't want this to happen with regularity.
I can only speak from my nearly 8 years of experience, and we've only had a couple of times when this has happened.
I actually don't remember one of this magnitude
Not of this
occurring that the work was done. We bring change orders to when appropriate, when needed, and it's very rare that it happens. We get contracts amended and with your approval before the work is done on a regular basis.
But I think your question is very legitimate. Commissioner stated that we need to just super understaffed and have the appropriate accountability. So I'm sure as you get up to speed that you'll be looking at those kind of things. We know we're understaffed in some departments. So. Okay, moving along. Then we have the consent agenda. So
move approval.
Wait a minute. Minus the minutes of March 17th. Okay, is your motion?
Move approval minus the minutes of March 17th.
Thank you. Moved by Commissioner West, seconded by Commissioner Smith. On the consent agenda, Nancy, the vote, please.
Aye. Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely? Commissioner West?
Aye.
Chair Norris?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Now, on the minutes of March 17th, unfortunately, I'm going to bring the rewrite of them and my something happened to the city website. I wasn't able to pull up the minutes after I looked at you, but I've got to get to the right place here. The problem is in the, thank you, where we discussed, where John Collins, the manager of South Fork Water Board, came to discuss the loan. It is totally incorrect. Where it, I think in every place that it uses the word coverage, it should be covenants, because the issue isn't that South Fork Water Board was not meeting our debt service coverage. That was not the issue. The issue was the ratio between the tax liability and the bonded debt and the assets of the water district, and so. I can provide that, or we can go back to maybe it's appropriate to go back to the minutes and have to hold this over, since I'm sorry I was able to pull it up for you.
To type them verbatim from that section, and you could approve them in that section verbatim if you prefer.
I'll just pose the question. Could have we been using the wrong terminology?
No. We said bond covenants, and I believe that in the discussion, well, coverage and covenants sound the same, so I didn't know whether someone maybe misheard that.
Mm-hmm.
So, David. Oh, did I misspeak? Oops. 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
Too close. I haven't read the minutes, Mayor, but we have a covenant to meet coverage.
Oh. Well.
You covenant that you'll have 1.25 coverage, so.
So coverage is correct.
We're not meeting the debt
covenant is that you will meet the coverage.
Yeah, but I don't think that this is correct. It's on page 3.
I don't have that.
Could we hold it over to see? Oh, you'll have it. Okay.
This is an old fashioned. This is old fashioned paper trail here that we're using.
It's right at the bottom of the page in that paragraph right there. Is that the city is not meeting its debt service coverage, and I think there's three sentences there that bear some relooking. But we don't have to take time right now to do it. Why don't
we'll look at it and then bring them back.
Get that together. Do you think it's correct? Okay. I guess my point would be that the ordinary reader would assume that we aren't able to cover the debt service, and that is not the issue. So that's what I think was the point of the discussion. So if that's the way if it's correct that way, I would certainly stand, but if we could just look at it. Okay, so we'll hold that one over. On the same minutes? Okay, sure, go ahead.
I just was reading the minutes too, and I have a change, although it may not be a change, and that is the purchase of East Coastal Library. It says Commissioner Smith was an employee of the Oregon City School District.
You know, that's how it's done sometimes.
I know before I got elected it said that in the paper too, so as far as I know, I'm still working there. I'm still showing up to work every day.
You just don't know what will happen if we don't pass this thing, right?
I will clarify that. Thank you for holding that one over. All right, moving along then to communications, and first, hear from our new city manager. David, your first city manager's report.
Well, first, I'd just like to thank you and the commissioners for entrusting me to do this important job for your community, and I'd like to thank the citizens who participated in the process and all the staff, and everyone's really, I think, gone out of their way on my first day to keep me busy and to make me feel welcome.
That will change.
Yeah, and I just really appreciate that. It's such a pleasure to be here. I have a lot to learn about your community, and I've already started the process of learning more about the community and also getting to know the people that I'll be working with. And I would almost like to take credit for doing all of this there. These are the budget books, and I can't, but I do need to thank Larry Patterson for getting the budget message done in the book. And then I just have about 2 weeks to familiarize myself with this so I can make a budget presentation to the committee. But we do have the books tonight, so I'm going to pass those out.
And our first budget meeting is the 19th, Monday the 19th, I believe. So.
And that's all I have this time.
Thank you. Okay, under Mayor and Commissioners, I have several appointments this evening. One is the reappointment of Marty Birch to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee for the term to December 31st, 2012, and the appointment of Patrick Sweeney to PRAC for the term to December 31st, 2012, and then I do have his member for the Planning Commission, and the only applicant, actually, his name is Charles Kidwell. He's an architect that's lived in the community a long time, and this will be his first city appointment, and his term will expire on December 31st, 2012. His name is Charles Kidwell. So, any reports that commissioners have? I have several too. Okay, Commissioner West? I don't have anybody up, so go ahead.
Well, I was at 3 meetings in the last few weeks on for what we commonly call C4, and for David's helping David being new here at the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee. I sat in on a scheduled morning on an interviewing candidates. They're hiring more staff to work with the cities with the C4, because they have staff that works with hamlets and villages, they have staff that works with CPO, and they're trying to beef up what they do with cities and to aid us with lobbying and legislation in the future. So that was one meeting. The second meeting, I also am on the C4 Executive Committee as a rep for the large cities, and Melody Thompson, the mayor of Canby, is the chair of the committee. She's the rep for small cities, along with Charlotte Lehan, the county commissioner, and Dave McTeague from the fire district, and Dick Jones from Oakwood Water, representing special districts. So as executive committee, that was our first meeting for this year, which is 2010. We set out our calendar for the year and discussed the work plan, and picked a date for a retreat this fall. So most of the year we're going to be talking about urban services. And so then I'm going to go to our first meeting after that, which was the general meeting for all the cities, hamlets and villages, CPOs, and special districts to come to. And we had, David, here's something you're going to have new, is Metro. And, oh, sorry, no cases allowed, sorry. We had a presentation from, I don't know if anybody knows of Malu Wilkinson? Malu. And it was on an urban growth presentation, not to be confused with urban and rural reserves. There's lots of urban everything at Metro. So, talking about economic growth and where we're going to grow and how, in the future. So that was just a background presentation, and then we started our discussion on urban service deliveries, which is really the meat of the whole year, as the county is looking. The county has lots of urban incorporated areas, unincorporated areas, the Clackamas Town Center area, Oak Lodge area. So, as county commissioner Lee Ham was saying, there's lots of money left on the table from these unincorporated areas that aren't cities. So we're going to talk about the county does not want to do urban services. So. And they don't feel like the cities do urban services. So next month, we just framed the discussion, and next month and the rest of the year, now we're going to start identifying exactly what those services are and putting a cost and trying to frame how we will get there. So it should be an interesting year, and I said this before, I really like it now that the CPOs and hamlets and villages are there, and it's a broader discussion, and we can all learn each other's perspectives. So tomorrow I'm going to have a meeting to go to. I'm going to go to the Main Street training with certified local government people from SHPO and learn about historic conservation easements and how to get properties in your community on the National Register. And Friday are the regional roundups from the State Park and Rec Department. This is being held in lieu of the Oregon Heritage Conference, and there we will participate in seminars and workshops, as well as shaping plans for our organizations and statewide heritage and how to get more tourism dollars here. We have a lot of empty facilities, so I was hoping that we can glean something from that.
Yeah, and I'll be there to give the welcome to everyone. And
see if I'm there in time.
There are some good workshops scheduled throughout the day on Friday. Commissioner Neely.
Two things. One, we have approved a contract with EMS to act as our consultant for the future use of the end of the Oregon Trail site. On April 1st, the person that was predominantly responsible for putting forward the proposal passed away. It was sudden, and we were immediately contacted. I think the very next day. Is that correct? The same day that he was discovered dead, we were contacted by the owner of AMS. I don't think any of this should have changed our decision to go with this particular contract, because this group is not just simply the individual that put up the proposal. The person had a researcher that was working with him to do some of the basic things that were being done ahead of his making a site visit, which actually would have occurred this week. And the owner of the company has taken the responsibility of performing. The owner's name is Bob Bailey. Is taking the responsibility of taking Arthur Greenberg. Is that right? Yes, Greenberg's place. He's the person who passed away. I think it would have been very, very difficult for us to not proceed and to look at things all over again. For one thing, we had already set up a schedule for interviews for interviewees, and also putting together most of the members of the task force for AMS to talk to on the first visit. I'm going to just ask Terry if she would state the expected date that this will resume, but I believe this is just about a 2-week delay. Or Scott Archer's right there by the microphone. Sorry.
I've got a microphone in front of me, so I'll grab it.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, Terry Bank and I just spoke again today with Mr. Bailey, the president owner of the firm, and he again reassured us and in fact said not just that he's available to do it, but that they want to continue this project. So I wanted to just kind of affirm that. We did talk about some new timelines. Really the main effect to us is just that timeline issue. We looked at some potential dates, as you said, Commissioner Neely. We were eventually going to be doing those initial visits this week with the consultant. And obviously that wasn't able to happen. Then looking ahead in the next couple of weeks, we had our budget sessions coming up, and we didn't want to overload all of the people involved, both commission and staff. So we looked at the very last week in April after the budget meetings conclude. So we're looking at tentatively setting up that Mr. Bailey would be here and do basically the same schedule that was initially envisioned with Arthur, April 28th through the 30th, possibly even to May 1st, the Saturday. He wants to commit to being here to get all that initial visitation work done, and then take that back, and then they begin to process that, and then it's another month or so before they bring that back. So overall, the effect here is about 3 or 4 weeks pushing the project a little bit later, and that's really it. There's no other effect on the project. So.
I do have a question, because in the many experiences that I've had with consultants, the individual that you interview is the company that you know, and you actually are hiring that individual. I know you spent time interviewing Arthur. So what do you know, and how much contact have you had with Mr. Bailey? Have you seen him in your life? Or because this is such a people process, and I know they have great reputation. I've looked at their website, etc. But if we don't bond with Mr. Bailey like you did with Mr. Greenberg, that concerns me.
Want me to talk to that, Doug?
Let me just say, we did have interviews as a committee, and of course, Terry Bankhead actually did have subsequent discussions with the individual. I'm not sure I would consider it bonding. What I regarded as is the capability of providing the services that were put forward, an indication that they in fact had those capabilities. And I don't know that any of this would have changed it. The fact that we would have, we could do some touchy-feely things if you want us to. Just let it go.
No, that's not my. You interviewed Mr. Goldberg specifically on the phone, and it appears that you have not interviewed Mr. Bailey, and that concerns me.
We've had Terry, you've had several subsequent conversations with Mr. Bailey. I think.
Just give me comment.
Yeah.
Let me just preface it by saying that our communication with Mr. Greenberg has been strictly over the phone as well. So we've had, a number of conversations with him. We had interviews with the subcommittee. So you are correct in that we have not specifically interviewed Mr. Bailey. However, I've had multiple conversations with him. He has assured myself and Scott Archer both that his working style is basically a replica of Mr. Greenberg's. They've worked together for 20 years. They used to work together for 10 years in the same office. And he is very confident that he can provide the same service in the same style that his former partner could provide.
Your personal discussions with him, that gave you confidence in that as well?
Yes.
Okay. And that's okay with me, but I just think the principle that, or the person that comes with the consultant is just so key to the success of the company.
I should say that this decision, although she's the person that spoke to them, we had the committee and had this discussion. Right. Lloyd Purdy, he was there, and Rochester and myself and Scott and Terry, we were all involved in a subsequent discussion after we found that Mr. Greenberg passed away. So.
If I might add, although his name is not on it, he did co-write the RFP with Mr. Greenberg.
So he's familiar from the beginning.
He's very familiar. I asked him that today to make sure you're familiar with what our RFP was. Are you familiar with the proposal submitted? And he again assured us he was involved with writing that and knows the project very well.
And had already, in the time since Arthur had passed away, had already taken all the information and begun processing it, and had already become fairly familiar with the project. So I think that just showed a commitment.
Level of commitment is there. Yeah. Okay, so that gives me the confidence I was seeking.
In terms of the timeline, if I could just add one other thing, he was recommending maybe a September 1st final presentation to the commission. I think originally we had scheduled it by the end of July 31st, but with the pushback, we have a meeting scheduled on the first Wednesday, which would be September.
Oh, if we had sought somebody else, it would have been a lot later.
What did you say, Dad?
If we had sought somebody else in place of AMS, it would have been a lot later.
Sure, who started the process.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, are there any further questions about this? Thank you for that update. Is that the end of your report?
Oh, no, and, both the mayor and, I attended a climate change retreat given by Metro. The supply, impact, it was an impact presentation of the, which stands for Metropolitan Policy Advisory Committee. And, Mr. Mumau was the prime presenter, and it was, Dr.
Nobel Prize winner, Peace Prize winner.
Yes, he was a Nobel Peace Prize winner. Excuse me. And he was the major presenter at this particular event, and we learned a lot. We got a lot of information on climate change.
Mostly really depressing.
Most of it really depressing. You know, you hear the personal reactions of, oh boy, this is one of the coldest snowstorms winters we've ever had over on the East Coast. People were complaining about some of the cold weather we had in the winter, and the last thing I was saying that must not be getting winter, must not be getting colder, but the people then this last summer, of course, we had a record number of days with temperatures greater than 90 degrees. Now, he wasn't bringing up any of this information, but what was interesting was that he was taking predicted changes in various of the measures that are related to climate change, including ice coverage and rate of sea level and so forth, taking those predictions and comparing it to the observations over the last few years. And the predictions were far more optimistic than the actual observed results. There are tremendous fluctuations, as everybody knows, from year to year. One of the things he points out that there's never been any predictions of more storms, but rather more intense storms, and that the mechanism of dispersing the increased energy is with greater storm intensities. The thing that I found most interesting was that if we do not take major action, if we take action that we think will take us to a specific point, what would actually happen would be that the carbon dioxide level would continue to increase. He pointed out something that I was completely unaware of, is that the carbon dioxide life in the atmosphere is 100 years. Half-life, excuse me. The half-life is 100 years. In other words, for the process of photosynthesis and so forth, or formation of calcium carbonate to form coral and so forth, were to proceed, it would take 100 years to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere by half. And of course, we're increasing the carbon dioxide level tremendously. And that's why it's recommended in our own that we in fact reduce our greenhouse gas productions by what is it, 2040? No. Do you remember the year?
Well, it's all a long way. It's 2050, I think. 2050
to bring it down to the I believe it was 75% of it was in 1990. I think that was the goal that the region has set itself towards, and it's challenging. But I think if looking at that presentation, taking any other action, I think puts us in a terrible position in terms of course, higher water level, higher ocean levels, the fact that we lose islands, the fact that a lot of our shoreline too will be lost in the process, and the cost associated with these changes may not result in any human extinction, but the cost of changes, the economic cost, and the cost of tremendous immigration movements that would result from the effort would be phenomenal. And so it was a rather sobering presentation. But the fact is that he felt, and he gave us an example of the world's ability to respond to the loss of ozone and to taking actions in terms of the chemicals that were reduced to actually prevent and reverse that ozone change were very effective. And he seemed to feel very positive that we were able to meet the challenges that were before us. He also made various comments about the developing world and pointing out that actions that have actually been taken in countries like China, they're taking the issue very, very seriously. And the point is, we have actually made a tremendous impact on the situation that we need to take the lead on. And do you want to add to that?
Well, we had discussion around our tables, of course, is what can we do, because he said that we only have three choices. We adapt, we mitigate, or we suffer. And that the actions that we take need to be way more dramatic than those that we are taking now. So, bike lanes, tree planting. Actually, replanting the tree canopy is a huge, huge worldwide effort, especially reclaiming agricultural land and putting it back into forests is a huge worldwide effort. And so anything that we can do. So it's extremely sobering as we consider at the regional tables where we sit, as well as the local tables, what can we do? And it is extremely sobering. In the afternoon, MPAC was in the morning, and the other Metro committee that I serve on, the Joint Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation, met in the afternoon to talk, and Nancy Fresher was also there, to talk about changes that we wanted to make in the MTIP program, the Metro Transportation Improvement Program. Plan. Which is, the money that comes from the federal government to our region and is doled out. Well, when the pie is all sliced, you take it off for regional projects like the Columbia River Crossing, and no, not that one.
No,
the Sunwood,
such as travel demand,
yes, right.
such as the TOD program, the program
and
for
the high capacity transit through Barber Boulevard.
Studies.
When those regional projects that we all agree on are not, that benefit all of us, are taken off, there's about $14 million left that if we divided it up by population or by request, each jurisdiction such as Oregon City might get about $250,000. What can you build for $250,000? Not much. And so there was a really very good discussion about what if instead of doling it out to each of us, that we pooled it and used some or all of that $14 million to do something like green freight or dedicated freight lines that actually, again, it would be a regional priority. So there's a lot of discussion of that, and in the context of climate change as well. Again, safety, we do not have enough money in the region to build more roads. And Clackamas County is dedicated to not building more roads. They're dedicated to making bike connections, to increasing active recreation, and to work on freight and high-capacity transit lines. And as you may have some other comments, Nancy sits on TDAC, which is Transportation Policy Advisory.
Yeah, given now there are parts of the region where building roads is still important, but it would be mostly for congestion hotspots and not for necessarily adding lane capacity. You would make more improvements at intersections to improve operations. But there are a lot of the transportation management systems and the ITS, intelligent transportation systems. Those are very economical ways that you can make big improvements to the overall transportation system. But the focus definitely seems to be more on, especially with climate change issues, really on focusing on how can we improve access to transit, and also how can we implement some of our regional 2040 regional land uses so that we can build communities that may rely less on the single occupancy vehicle. So I see where there's going to there very well may be a good portion of that money, not just go ahead and award it to Metro regional programs, but then focus it on the active transportation plan, which we've recently developed, and also forwarding planning for the high capacity transit corridors, I think, is very possible. Really the focus being on not cars, but realizing that cars are still important, but not building more lanes.
And to that end, I believe that the governor's staff called today and wishes to hold a high-capacity transit and transportation hearing in Oregon City on May 26th. You'll hear more about that and where but we're here in the chambers, so we'll let you know more when we know. Okay, Commissioner Zita, your turn.
Thank you. I have 3 items to talk about tonight. In March, I attended the neighborhood meeting of the South End Hazel Grove Neighborhood Association, and the one particular issue was quite on the minds of the citizens there that night, which was the root damage and foundation damage of some of the described trees, which is still a concern on the south side, very much so, and I'm sure we have not heard the last as a commission about that. And I kind of got the sense that night that it might even become a campaign issue this fall, because there are some well-organized people that are concerned about that. So that will be interesting. Last week I attended, in my individual capacity, but I do want to share it because it really concerns us. I attended the Attorney General's Forum on Government Transparency, which was held up in Portland. Attorney General Kroger is doing an analysis of our open records and open meetings laws with an eye to presenting a package of amendments to the next legislative session in an effort to improve transparency in government, including governments such as us. One startling statistic that he presented to us was that his staff, which he has combing through not just the Public Records Act in Chapter 192, but these exemptions get peppered through all kinds of statutes, and they've identified 430 exemptions to disclosure of public records. That really shook me. I was astonished at that. They identified some other problems, which included the tendency of local governments to charge exorbitant fees for copying and time to dissuade citizens from seeking access to public records. One of the people who testified there claimed, and I haven't verified this on the website or anything, that West Lynn charges $9 a page to copy public records under the public records laws. That would be astonishing if true.
That they have no money.
Well, maybe that's what they're doing.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right.
Yeah. I even before I came to Oregon, in Michigan, and in Oregon, I've been very involved in public records issues, and one thing that I noted to the Attorney General as far as my testimony was that under our statute, one way that public bodies can kind of mess with folks who are attempting to make public records requests is that under the statute, when you make a request, you cannot file a complaint with the district attorney that you've been denied public records until you actually get a denial. But our statute does not.
You're talking about the city statute?
No, the state statute. The state statute does not define when a denial has occurred. It just says that the public body shall respond to a request within a reasonable time. Is that 6 months? Is that 5 hours? I mean, and that's been used obviously countless times to just kind of throw banana peels in front of people who are trying to make public records access. In my experience, what I actually testified to, my biggest concern about public records law in Oregon is that when push comes to shove, there's one surefire way that a public body can obstruct folks' access to public records, and that's just to destroy the records. There is no, there's really no sanction in the statute for a public body to just destroy the records outside of the Secretary of State's retention rules. There's a tampering statute, but that actually makes it a criminal offense, a misdemeanor offense to destroy public records. And that's not being enforced. It's clear that district attorneys and the Attorney General do not want to criminalize that type of activity. So what I suggested to the Attorney General, and did get a nod of acknowledgement at the idea from him, was that something less severe than that should be in place, such as a civil fine system that the Secretary of State, for example, could enforce, rather than resort to criminal prosecution for the destruction of public records. But right now, it's just open season. It's just there's no sanction for doing that, and that concerns me. So, a third thing I'd like to talk about is Monday night I went to the CIC meeting, as did a couple other members of the commission, and I was pleased that John Collins, the general manager of South Fork, gave a presentation to the CIC with our finance director, Mr. Wimmer, regarding the proposed loan of $2.4 million to South Fork because of the bond covenant to cover. Is that it, Mr. Wimmer? That issue, which is I've actually gotten some positive comment on that from citizens. Of course, I've gotten some negative comments too. It's there's actually more positive comment in the community than I had anticipated there would be, because of the possibility that the community, the city, could generate some revenue from making this loan. It's a very complex situation. One thing that I thought about while I was sitting there listening is the absolute complexity. Someone was commenting that, you know, the complexity of it the whole thing went way over her head. And it's kind of a challenge for both managers and elected officials, who in the representative form of government, to try to explain complicated issues. We up here, work in, this is an unpaid job, and for us to try to grapple with all the various issues that we have to deal, both in our professional and personal lives, and deal with the complicated issues that we confront as commissioners too. It's daunting, and we have staff to help us out, and the citizens, I think, have less help in that regard, and we don't have journalism like we used to explain these issues anymore to citizens also. So I actually had sent out emails inviting folks to come to the CIC, since we had some of our staff here to explain the issue. And I wanted to make some suggestions to my colleagues up here about moving forward on this question. One is, I want us to grapple with and get broader perspectives on some of the issues that are making this loan request necessary. Some of what's making it necessary is litigation against Clackamas River Water over rate structures, for example.
Commissioner Nacita, would this be better at a work session?
Yeah, that's I think too.
You're getting into specifics that aren't noticed to the public now.
Well, I'm actually, if I may continue, making a suggestion for a work session item.
Okay. We'll talk with the city manager about the filter later.
But
yeah.
We have South Fork, the loan, as a work session item. But I wanted to suggest to the commission that we include on that work session, make invitations. I know West Lynn is coming, but I would also like to invite representatives from Clackamas River Water to get their perspective on the rate structure issue. And I've also,
Yes, that's appropriate.
That's, wait, okay.
And this conversation probably would be best at a work session.
That's what I'm trying to make it, is a conversation at a work session. I don't agree with the fact that there's litigation between South Fork and CRW as a reason not to invite CRW to a work session of the City Commission of Oregon City. We're not in litigation with CRW.
No, that's
We're not in litigation with Water Watch. I want, as the City of Oregon City, to, get the broad perspective even of people who are in an adversarial position with South Fork, because there's always two sides to a story. And I want to make a decision on the big picture, not just, one side of the picture.
This is a bit awkward because even though it's with the issue with South Fork, it is, West Moon and Oregon City constitute the governing board of South Fork. So I think there is. Before we ever proceed this way, I want to get advice from our city council.
The city attorney.
Yes.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it up.
I'll have to ask Mr. Kavaisman too, weigh in on that.
Yeah. One point I will make is two parties in litigation can talk to each other. I might not be able to talk, or if I were on the board of South Fork Water Board, I might not be able to talk to the legal counsel of Water Watch. There's a disciplinary rule. The two parties who are in litigation can talk to each other all they want. And
Right.
Yeah.
We don't do that.
We don't do that. I don't do that.
parties to litigation can talk to each other.
Not when they are represented by attorneys and those underlying boards don't consent to having discussions without their consent. I can't advise you to go talk to somebody you're in litigation with.
You can't, but nothing prevents me from doing that.
Without consent of counsel on both sides. It's a two-sided thing. There's two lawyers.
We can exchange emails about that.
Yeah, this is something that Mr. Kavaisman is more involved with anyway, so I think that he and you can talk about it.
And it might be something you would want to sit down with Mr. Collins actually and discuss in private as well. I'm sure he would be happy to talk with you about that.
I'm sure.
Okay. Commissioner Smith.
My turn.
Yours.
Okay, just really quick. I attended the Neighborhood Association meeting, and I appreciate the invitation. That was me and Commissioner Neely both attended that meeting. And I wanted to make an announcement that I hadn't heard yet this evening that I wanted to make sure we get out there, which is the Clackamas County Historical Society's fundraising event, which is going to be hosted at the high school, Oregon City High School. It's a premiere of a movie called In Pursuit of a Dream. And I read a little bit about it. There's a great article in the Oregon City News that kind of fills you in on it. But
and a great website.
Yeah, my take from just reading it is it's a modern day group of teenagers who kind of go out on the Oregon Trail and how that make the trip or partial trip. I don't know if it was the whole trip or not, and how that has affected their life and so it really looks good. The cost is $15 for tickets at the door, and it's at 7 o'clock on Saturday night at the Oregon City High School Theater. And so, obviously, Clackamas County Historical Society is trying to get going and back on track, and so I think this is a good opportunity to help that mission out. The other,
the website has a great trailer to see.
Okay.
Called InPursuitOfADream.com, I believe that it is. And some of you may have been down at Clackamas Park during the sesquicentennial when we greeted the group as they arrived here at the end of the trail. And those kids were pretty transformed by the process. So And the company's been using this as a fundraiser all over and have been raising big bucks through it. So do encourage you to attend.
The only other thing is that I kind of wanted to update from staff on South End traffic light. The last email we got from from Larry was that it would be up by March 26th. It's still not there.
I'll have to check on that, but they're in the process. It's coming.
Okay.
I can get you a more definite date and send it to the city manager.
Okay.
Sure.
And
I'll stop asking you.
And last but by no means least, everyone's favorite subject, sewers. We had the first meeting of the Wastewater Advisory Committee, and I got appointed chair. So, I'm really excited about that, as you can imagine. This committee kind of approved the bylaws, and this has been a committee that has been very controversial to get approved. So it's got a good representation and good following of the first meeting, which was 29 minutes long. But we have agreed to meet quarterly. And so the next meeting will be June 3rd, if you wish to follow. But before that, though, there is an open house in the city of Milwaukee, Thursday, April 15th, from 5:30 to 7 at the Masonic Lodge on Main Street. And this will be an open house where the community can hear about and consider a Kellogg plant, which is their sewage treatment plant, revisioning process that the city has gone through. And so this is a kind of a comment period on that, if you'd like to attend. So in subsequent meetings of the Wastewater Advisory Committee, will be presented with the 20-year strategic plan that the Water Environmental Resources is considering, which will contain things like water reuse, which they're beginning to do, public involvement processes, energy projects, so we're going to try to do a lot of retrofitting, and assets management. So that's beginning work of that process. That concludes my report. I see you're back on. Is that okay? Commissioner Neely.
The announcement is we are having our joint city stall cleanup on April 17th. 9 o'clock, meeting time at Clackwood Park. I'm sure there are many sites that have been identified. I don't know what they are. I know what one of them is, but in any case, all citizens within or without Oregon City are invited to work on this cleanup today.
What time did you say?
9 o'clock, Clackwood Park.
9 o'clock. Don't you have to pre-register? 8 o'clock register. Okay. Great. Thank you for that. Daphne, Commissioner West.
I'm done.
Oh, okay. Anything else to come before us? We are adjourned.